Now, we've been talking this whole program about the collapse of the border, because the collapse of the border is not simply about that. It's about the collapse of America. It's a Cloward and Piven strategy to collapse the economy, to accelerate and expand the welfare state so quickly that the country cannot afford it, and it will collapse the country. That's also what Obamacare is about. It's a Cloward and Piven strategy. And they are putting it on with steroids right now. But there's also a question of what do they do after they collapse America? Well, that question was asked at a seminar a couple of weeks ago in London. And David Petraeus was the one who was chosen to give the answer. And he said, well, what comes after America? What comes after the collapse of America, that is? Well, he says that's easy, North America. And he goes on to say that for 20 years now, we've had the North American Free Trade Agreement. And what is happening now that we see in America is that being made an established fact. If they had done it right away when they passed the legislation, people would have realized what's going on. But people don't realize it when it happens to them very slowly. We had Pelosi go last Saturday to the border and make it very clear that she didn't see a couple of different countries. She just saw one community, North and South. And it just happened to have a border running through it. Let's play those quotes, and I want to get Dr. Jerome Corsi to comment on that. Here's Pelosi and Petraeus in the middle.
Anyone who comes here sees that this is a community with a border going through it.
Boldly proclaimed the coming North American decades as the title now. It's founded on recognition that if you put these three economies together, as has been the case 20 years into the North American Free Trade Act implementation, you find unique countries in terms of demographics.
We're all Americans in this hemisphere, North and South America, and this crisis that some call a crisis, we have to view as an opportunity.
There we go. This is not a crisis, but it's an opportunity to essentially make NAFTA an established fact. Dr. Jerome Corsi joins us from WND. Dr. Corsi, what do you make of what you just heard?
Well, I reported on both in WND, and I've been writing about this now going back to about 2005, that there is a move on the left, globalist move, to create a North American Union. And we saw it even under President Bush with the Security and Prosperity Partnership in North America. These themes don't stop. And key to getting this to succeed, there's two keys. One is it has to be a stealth methodology. In other words, the globalists and the politicians like President Obama advancing this agenda have to be able to deny they're doing it. And secondly, it has to be done in a gradual enough way so that people don't catch on, or so the next step seems natural or logical. I mean, 20 years ago, if you'd had this influx of kids across the border, and they're not kids coming across the border, these are predominantly teenagers. A great number of them are gang members, drug cartel dealers, mixed in with criminals, terrorists. I mean, we're doing no background checks. We're doing no health checks. And it's not a refugee problem. This is a created crisis to flood the border with children, maybe 200,000 of them. Because the play the globalists, the Democratic left are making is that Americans will be too soft-hearted. We won't want to, send these kids back home.
Yeah.
And in the process, what we do is we blur the border. 20 years ago, it wouldn't have been tolerated. But today, I'm sorry, it's been just a very, very...
I think it's a situation where essentially it looks like they're taking the mask off. And that's what I find very troubling. We're seeing that they're accelerating this expansion of the welfare state at the same time that they're essentially doing a bit of a reveal here. I thought it was pretty astounding to hear the comments of both Pelosi and Petraeus to say that, this is about the North American Union. We, of course, have had it for 20 years. And now we see that we have some unique demographics, is the kind of euphemisms that Petraeus had. I also thought it was interesting that this was done at the Margaret Thatcher Conference on Liberty. I mean, here's somebody who went to Bilderberg and went toe-to-toe with these people and was driven out because she didn't like the European Union. And, of course, the European Union is just a different part of the strategy for the North American Union. They want to consolidate everything after they get these regional consolidations.
Well, see, George Bush, I mean, here's what I'm talking about. George Bush went down to the border to declare 2005 the Security and Prosperity Partnership and had these SPP meetings with the head of Mexico and the head of Canada. And so just having the three of them together there on the stage, the flags all together, presents to visual image subliminally that this is North America. Now, of course, we beat that back. I wrote a book called The Late Great USA. Alex Jones fought it very hard, as did WND, making this agenda obvious to our readers and to people listening to your radio show, that in fact this was a conscious effort, just like the European Union had been created.
Yes.
As a socialist, communist methodology. We don't need borders. We really are all one entity, and creating these regional groups, North America, then trade groups has always been the methodology. We do a NAFTA and then say, oh, that's just for trade. But ultimately, it brings with it a whole political structure to make the trade work and to resolve disputes in trade.
And Dr. Corsi, as we're talking about the NAFTA, and they see this as an accomplished fact, I think that explains why, when you're talking about George Bush being down there, that you covered it with the flags and everything, I think that's why the GOP has not only been silent about this, but essentially complicit in it. They're talking about, well, we've heard this from them as well, saying this is an opportunity for us to do immigration reform. But you're talking about how they bring this in with the trade agreements. We now see that they're moving beyond the step of consolidating regions like North America and Europe. They're now moving to join those areas into a world government with a secretive trade agreement. The Transatlantic Partnership, we also see the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Those are being negotiated in complete secrecy without any input or oversight from the public, and certainly not even from our elected representatives.
I've been writing about those for 2 years, warning people they're coming.
Yes.
So what you have is Congress not giving fast-track authority, which would have been designed to rubber stamp the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which is the one the Obama administration wanted to do first. Mm-hmm. But see, the globalists don't mind because they've had the first salvo. They've put in people's minds that this is coming. Even if they don't win this round, when they come back the next time, it's going to seem like, oh, well, we've heard this before. And this desensitizing of Americans to the fact that we are North America, that, there is no border, that we can let these people trans-migrate at will, that, the whole idea that Republicans think we get cheap labor with the migrants coming in, and the Democrats think we get a generation of new Hispanic Democratic voters, and the Democrats are going after a permanent presidential majority for the future with African Americans, Hispanics, single women. They're playing identity politics. They're playing interest group politics. They're promising everybody Obama phones and food stamps and DREAM Act, and you name the promises. The socialists always come on promising utopia. What you get at the end is slavery. What you get at the end is the loss of rights, the loss of nation. I mean, just take a look at where the country is. We're moving into part-time employment. As I've said, going back to the World Trade Organization, the globalists have put the jobs in China. Massive numbers of Americans have been unemployed.
Especially among our youth. We're supposed to embrace the youth of other countries with this DREAM Act, and yet it's American youth who have such amazingly high unemployment. And of course, they're not going to be given college educations unless they become indentured servants, but immigrants from other countries who come here illegally can get in-state tuition at any state that they want to go to, and many times they get a free ride going through there. But I think the most important thing that we could get across to people, Dr. Corsi, is to get them to not look at this as something that is simply Obama, but this is something, as you point out, it's been going on for decades, going back to the beginning of the North American Union. And it's not a matter of incompetence either, because this is a plan. Many people don't understand that it's about America being taken down. They just look at it and they say, well, we're making a mistake, or it's incompetent, or Obama doesn't know what he's doing. But it's none of those things. This is a deliberate plan, and we can't even get people to understand what they see as being completed, and that's the North American Union, while they're working on the very next stage. They're laying the groundwork and establishing the legislative agreements to establish the next stage of consolidation between these different economic areas.
Well, and that's the logic of the Collard-Piven socialist argument, is that, you know, you say, okay, well, we don't want to disadvantage these children coming across the border, or certainly we care about poverty, and, you know, clearly the workers around the world, we want to help the world develop. So using good, you know, normal human emotions, these agreements are put into place which are completely at odds, which will destroy the system. The architects like Jean Monnet, who designed the European Union, socialist background, they all said, well, if we could just have a united Europe, we wouldn't have a World War III. World War I was the rise of Germany, you know, against England and France. World War II was a repeat. We don't want Germany rising again, so we'll create a North American, we'll create a European Union. Well, that was a lie. That whole thing was a lie. It was designed from the beginning to make Europeans be one government. And the government is in Brussels and Luxembourg. You get unappointed, unrepresentative, not elected bureaucrats, nameless bureaucrats writing your laws, producing volume after volume of rules and regulations that you have to obey, and pretty soon you've lost your freedom. That's the goal from the beginning. And to wake people up to see that they're being led along this path step by step, as the Collard-Piven is a lying strategy and it's a progressive strategy. It's put into place a little bit at a time, always previewing a little bit ahead, but assuming, even when you've lost, even when, you know, the North American Union didn't get voted in, even when the Security and Prosperity Partnership had to be disbanded because of criticism on President Bush, President Obama comes in and presumes that North America is already going into place because the idea has already been lodged in people's minds.
Oh, yes. And do you see any sign whatsoever that there's anyone in the GOP that is effectively going to do anything about it? I mean, we see that the NDAA Act, where they say the military can arrest people at will and just disappear them off the street, hold them indefinitely without due process, that's a bipartisan issue. It appears that certainly the GOP leadership is fully on with this. They call it immigration reform, but we haven't seen any pushback against what Obama is doing from the GOP. Have you seen any pushback that you're aware of?
Not significantly. And look, this has nothing to do with not passing immigration reform.
Right.
This has to do with President Obama refusing to obey the laws that are on the books to enforce border security.
Exactly.
Going back to the Secure Fence Act, which was, you know, Duncan Hunter, when he was in Congress, pushed forward, representative from San Diego. Congress voted the Secure Fence Act, and then Republicans like Kay Bailey Hutchinson in Texas came along and stripped the law of its, you know, the necessity to build a fence by putting in an appropriations bill for DHS. The fence didn't have to be built if the local officials felt there was a better alternative to securing the border. So virtually no fence got built.
Right, right. You know, well, we now see that we've got an American general who's saying this is an existential threat to the United States. And of course, I'm sure you're aware this has been a plan for a long time to try to create a kind of martial law situation. I'm very concerned about a military buildup at our border. I'm even concerned about a fence. I want to remove the incentives that are drawing people in, but we can't even seem to do that, can we?
Well, you've got to have border security. You have to have a border.
Yes.
And one that's this porous has got to be secured. What does frighten me is this creeping big brotherism. I mean, the national security, the NSA being able to monitor every phone call, look at every email. I'm going to monitor our discussion on Skype and a radio broadcast, archive all this data. This is the beginning of a totalitarian state. It's the beginning of the state punishing people for thought crimes.
Yeah.
And the left is intolerant. The left is the one who are the globalists, and they're intolerant. They don't believe in First Amendment. They don't believe in free speech. They believe that, you're wrong if you disagree with them. You're immoral. You're not sufficiently evolved to understand, their lofty moral concepts. Well, their lofty moral concepts have been rejected by biblical principles going back 2,000 years, and by the American exceptionalism, which even the Republicans deny. You've got.
Well, there's a great deal of hypocrisy that's going on. We've got Joe Biden and Jerry Brown on record back in 1975 saying, we can't take any more Vietnamese. We can't open up our borders to them. Why should we take care of them? And these are the same people who, as you pointed out earlier, they're looking to create a Democratic majority. This is essentially gerrymandering by importation, I believe. And, but part of that is, of course, it's a collapse the economy, rebuild it with this new demographic that they're bringing in. And then all of this fits into the globalist consolidation that we see going on.
The InfoWars crew absolutely loves coffee because we love being awake. And I am somewhat of a connoisseur of coffee. So many times you go to a restaurant or even to a coffee shop and the coffee tastes like garbage. And in all the different coffees I've tried, my favorite is grown in the high mountains, in shade, Arabica, on the border with Guatemala in southern Mexico by the Chiapas farmers. I make sure we've done the research. I make sure it's the very best product that we can offer you when I put my name on it. And I believe, and it's my taste, so you may differ, that this is the best coffee in the world from southern Mexico. Wake Up America Patriot Blend, 100% organic, Arabica shade grown. And then we have the Immune Support, 100% organic coffee, infused with a special type of mushroom known to boost the immunity.
This coffee is seriously so smooth. I normally have to douse my coffee with cream and sugar and cinnamon and all kinds of tasty treats, but I drink this black. It is so good.
Well, that's why I like it, is that it has a kick, it has really good caffeine in it, it has a good clean wake up that lasts for a long time, doesn't give me a headache, but it's so smooth, it's so delicious. Just try it out for yourself. I'm telling you, this is my favorite coffee. We went through a lot of trouble to bring you this. Just try it, and I think you'll be hooked like we are here at InfoWars. Well, folks, find out for yourself and support the information war today. It's all available at InfoWarsLife.com or by calling toll-free 888-253-3139.
Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. I'm David Knight, and I have on the phone Dr. Jerome Corsi. We've just been talking about his article, the astonishing statement from General Petraeus in London a couple of weeks ago at the Thatcher Conference on Liberty, saying, what comes after America? And, of course, his answer was the North American Union. And if you want to understand what's going on with the border collapse, it's not just the collapse of the border, the collapse of the economy, the rebuilding into a Democrat, or I should say a socialist majority, but it's also this consolidation. And just before we went to the break, we had to cut off Dr. Corsi, who wanted to make a point. Go ahead, Dr. Corsi. What was it that you wanted to say?
Well, I wanted to explain that this opening of the border is a conscious plan by the globalist political left in particular this time around, and the Democrats. There's a full understanding. By the time we have several million children, and they're not children, these are teenagers. Many of them are criminals. Many are gang members. Many are cartel members. Who knows who they are? We're not doing any background checks or medical checks. Though the next thing, it'll be chain immigration. The next thing that happens is they'll try to settle these children with relatives. These kids will want their parents and their other relatives to come here. The government stayed with this 13 million Hispanics immigrated into the United States. It could be 23 million. It could be 33 million. We don't really know. And it becomes a revolving door. Mm-hmm. So that pretty soon we are Central America. And the people who are here, work here to the extent they can. They're underclass. We're going to have to educate them. They'll vote Democrat. They'll want all the benefits they've been promised, food stamps, DREAM Act education, you name it. And then they'll go back to their countries to live in retirement with the money they've made here. But at the same time, they're coming with no understanding of America, of our history, of our values, of our Constitution. They're trained in a progressive sense. They are socialists. And the Democrats are fully understanding that their goal is to create Democratic voters, to erase the borders, and to push ahead into this global, socialist idea of a North American Union.
Well, yes, and of course, and they've been doubling the estimates of the number of people coming in just every couple of days. As you're pointing out, this is going to be very similar to the anchor babies that we've seen in the past, and yet this is going to be essentially anchor teens, if you will. But they're not even teenagers. I mean, they're not necessarily young children, teenagers. This includes people up to the age of 31, according to the DREAM Act.
And look, the Republicans are complicit in this because the Republicans are equally globalists. They want the idea of free labor. The Republicans have been told by the establishment Republican Party, including the Mitt Romneys of the world, that they'll offend the Hispanics if they don't if they're not Democrat light and go all the things the Democrats want to do. The Republicans should be saying, no, look, we'll have legitimate, legal immigration. We will have people here who we want here, who can contribute and can work. We want people who will build families, who will take an oath of allegiance to the United States of America, say the Pledge of Allegiance, not be part of Mexico or some other country in Central America, just living here. And that's part of the difficulty. We're not immigrating with an intent to absorb into America a new group of people. Yes. These people are bringing with them Central America and Mexico.
That's why immigration needs to be controlled, because there's a limit to how many people can be assimilated into a society without balkanizing it into different groups. I think this is very much Obama's youth core that he's talked about. Is that your take on it? Oh, looks like we're...
It's also identity politics, dividing one group against the other. The losers here are going to be the American blacks, unfortunately, and that's another long story.
Yes. Thank you very much, Dr. Jerome Corsi, WND, and of course, he's written on this. We hope that we can get people to see the larger picture, and the larger picture is not just the Cloward and Piven, but it's also what replaces it.
Alex Jones here to break down some exciting developments in the area of research concerning supplemental iodine. It's nothing less than phenomenal. I began to get into iodine a few years ago because it was helping me and my family so much get healthy and detoxify. And I used some of the mainline iodine supplements and they upset my stomach and I had some issues with it. Until I discovered a product being developed by Dr. Group, who I was already interviewing as an expert on my radio show, and I began taking the product before he actually rolled it out. You now know it as Survival Shield True Nascent Iodine that your body can really absorb. Then, about a year ago, he said, listen, if you think this is powerful, I'm going to come out with rare earth, deep earth crystals that are incredibly powerful that no one else has as a source for their iodine from between 7,000 and 12,000 feet, literally drilled out of the ground. You put it on a hot plate and it turns into the pure gas. No one else has 99.99% pure iodine. And the results that I personally have had have been life-changing. I was over 270 pounds. And with the iodine, exercise, and better diet, I have lost now more than 50 pounds total, and I'm continuing to lose the weight. I have more energy, my libido, all this crap came out of my skin. I believe our research is conclusive. This is the best iodine out there. And I know this for a fact. Nobody else has got iodine based on these pure crystals, ladies and gentlemen. This is innovating. This is trailblazing. And the best part is it helps fund Infowars.com, the radio show, the TV show, the whole media operation promoting true libertarian ideas. For a limited time, experience the ancient power of Survival Shield X2. Take advantage of this unprecedented 30% off Super Detox special at InfoWarsLife.com.